On today's show, our review of the GT Omega Racing Evo.
Welcome to Inside Sim Racing. I'm Sean Cole with my good buddy,
Darren Ganji.
and we're here today to review the GT Omega Racing Evo sim racing rig. And for many of you out there, you might remember that name because not too long ago we did the Pro model, and this
Well, that was actually, we've done two reviews.
You're right.
We did the Pro, and then we went back after they sent us the triple screen stand and did another one.
Yes, when they had made a few improvements.
So this is part 3 of GT Omega.
But this one is a completely different design, completely different approach to building a rig, but from that same company.
Yeah, it's hard to say if it's that much different because they're very similar to an extent. Both weigh about the same weight. Both are about the same price too. This rig comes in at 216 British pounds, which is only 8 pounds more expensive than the Pro model that we were just talking about.
Now the Pro model, the one we formerly reviewed, was built with round tubing and lots of it. I mean, you had tubes going here, there, and kind of everywhere. This one's with kind of a beefy square tubing and a lot less of it.
Yeah, and it's, like Sean said, the beefy square tubing comes in black only. Also comes with the familiar GT Omega red and black pleather covered seat. And it's, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, it's basically a fake leather. Synthetic.
My spell check did not like the word pleather, by the way.
I can imagine, because it's not a real word. What is the definition of pleather? Faux leather?
Yeah, but P. I don't think
P-H-O,
P.
faux.
Oh, faux. Nah.
So anyway, fully reclinable, so you got the adjustment back and forth. Also, it's got seat rails, so you can move it forward and back. And it's also got the neat embroidered GT Omega, does it say Evo? Nope, just GT Omega Racing logo right here on the top.
On the back as well.
Oh, it's at the full logo on the back.
Exactly. Now, focusing on the pedal plate, it's actually an adjustable pedal plate that has 3 different positions. You got kind of high incline, a medium, and then flattened out. In addition to that, it does have a shifter mount available, and what's cool is it's easily adjustable for left or right hand shifting, depending on what you prefer, and it's pre-drilled for both the Logitech and the Thrustmaster shifters, so ready to go. I don't think I mentioned it, but the pedal plate is actually pre-drilled for Logitech, Fanatic, and Thrustmaster pedals right out of the box.
That's really good. And now let's talk about the wheel deck, speaking of drilling. And the wheel deck is also pre-drilled for all 3 formats. So Thrustmaster, Logitech, and Fanatic. The wheel deck can be adjusted in height and in the angle. And it also comes made for a butt kicker, so you can mount a butt kicker. Now, where is that?
Now, it looked like on the picture they just had on the cross beam going across right below the seat. Now, the main part of the frame is actually mostly interlocking, but at the main points you've got a nut and bolt, or 2 in the case of the midpoint, that you tighten down. And you mentioned the adjustable deck. You've got an Allen screw that actually cinches down pretty tight on that. And then like in the wheel deck area, you've got a knob that you can use to kind of adjust the front to back motion a little bit.
So there's some specs on the GT Omega Evo racing rig. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about how it came packaged and the assembly that went along with it. And came nicely packaged into 2 boxes, 1 large box for the seat, and then a smaller one with all the metal parts. All the metal was wrapped nicely in bubble wrap, but we did have one piece get a little scratched, but nothing a Sharpie couldn't fix.
No, that's my favorite fix for a sim rig, especially a black one.
Yep.
Now I got to take care of the assembly, and there were no instructions. You kind of got a picture of what it would look like when it was fully done, but take that and a little bit of common sense and the pieces just kind of fit together the way it should go, and there was nothing you could really do that wrong. So the assembly was pretty straightforward.
And so once everything got assembled and put together, it was time to mount a wheel, and we opted for the T500. We got the F1 edition with the pedals, and we're running the Bowden load cell mod, so that actually really showed how much flex there could be in the rig, because we're really having to stomp on that brake.
Yeah, that's a stiff brake, so it's putting full power, probably a good 100 pounds of pressure to see if it's flexing.
Yep, and on top of that, Sean put together an 80/20 extrusion tubing monitor stand, and I know some people are going to be asking for the specs on that because it's really beefy and really cool. Actually, my new triple stand is very similar to this. with some more beef to it. But so yeah, created that and running it on a PC, iRacing, and there you have it.
So there's the setup and all the specs on this rig. When we come back, we're gonna go over our opinions, the pros and cons, and we are gonna put it on the rev scale right after this.
Tamiya's extensive lineup of radio-controlled vehicles provides hobbyists with the joy of running exact replicas of their favorite car, tank, or off-road vehicle. Another attraction of these vehicles is their use of high-grade materials, such as nylon resin, carbon fiber, and polycarbonate. With precise mechanical systems, the maintenance and adjustment of the various components, as well as performance upgrading with optional parts, allows for truly competitive racing. For more information about Tamiya, visit us at www.tamiyausa.com.
Welcome back to our review of the GT Omega Racing Evo Sim Racing rig. That's a lot of words right there.
I think you threw in a few too many.
I probably did, but you get the gist of it.
That's right.
Now, I was the one who assembled it, so I went ahead and set this thing up for me, which means I slammed that wheel deck all the way down to the bottom. I got in. The seat rails, I actually slid it in. There was a little room to go forward, so somebody smaller than me is going to fit in this rig as well. Recline the seat to the right position. I got to tell you, right out of the gate, I had a very good, comfortable fit in this rig.
Now for me, the wheel deck at the stock seating position, well actually, if I sat in Sean's chair, my knees would be pretty much hitting my chin. But even when I set the seat back, my knees were still kind of hitting the wheel deck just a little bit. But I hadn't adjusted it up. But it was still drivable, and since Sean had mounted the pedals to the left, and I'm a left foot braker, my knees weren't hitting anything, and it was a really comfortable driving position, basically just going from Sean's position to mine with just a seat adjustment. Now for me, I would want to move the wheel up a little bit more, but other than that, it fit the 6'4" guy just fine.
And down to below a 5'5" guy just fine as well.
Yep.
Well, before we get into too much detail, we better get into the pros and cons, otherwise we'll end up just being redundant, which we tend to do.
We do that a lot.
So why don't we start things off with the cons? And the first thing I'm going to point out is there is a little bit of mid-rig flex. And this happened more when I was watching you drive than when I was driving. I certainly didn't feel it, but I could see it happening when you were driving.
Actually, it was more when I was putting it to the extreme. It wasn't when I was driving, it's when I sat. The first thing I did is I sat in it, I stomped on the brake, and we're getting this flex in the middle of the rig. And I was like, wow, that's a lot. It was definitely more exaggerated as it was stretched out to my height. But when I drove with it, I didn't notice that at all.
Right.
I'm not, you and I talked about it, and if we're stomping on the brake that hard, we're locking them up. So I did not feel that flex at all while I was driving. So it is there though.
Yeah, you'll see it.
Yep. Next con, a little bit of wheel deck wobble. Again, I didn't notice it while I was driving. You're not getting that side-to-side wobble like some rigs have. Just maybe a little bit of movement, but nothing that's going to hamper your driving.
Right. Another thing that, and this one I say very lightly, there was a limited amount of wheel deck movement. So I don't mean movement in terms of wiggle, I mean in terms of adjustability. So there's a little bit of room to move it forward and back. You could move it a little bit up and down, and you could move a little bit of angle, but you couldn't do anything very significant. So if you were looking for a really laid out design or something bizarre, it might be hard to achieve that angle.
Yep. And the last two cons are the lack of instructions to assemble. Sean mentioned that it took a little deciphering because it was mainly just, follow the pictures. But I think they're just trying to make it generic and not have, a bunch of different languages. And then the final con is that based in the UK, shipping might be a little expensive depending on where you're at. So, and I know GT Omega is working on other options for distribution in North America and other locations. So as they do, that shipping cost will come down.
Absolutely.
But that could definitely affect the price of the rig.
Yeah. So we were a little long-winded, but that wasn't a lot of cons.
Nope.
So now let's move on to the pros for this rig, and I'll start off with one of my favorite things, and this is just right when you look at it. It's a good-looking rig. So, I mean, I consider it's an inexpensive rig, but it's kind of short and beefy, which means maybe that's why I like it. I kind of like its stature.
No, and I do too. I think it definitely looks cool and racy. And the next pro is the seat. Speaking of looking racy, really comfortable actually. I was surprised at how comfortable this pleather can be. I gotta say it's probably a little more comfortable than the other GT Omega seat.
Yeah, you know, they didn't really sell it or market it as an upgraded seat, but I agree, it's more comfortable, and actually I think it even looks cooler. Another pro is that this rig is ready to go with all three of the main brands of wheels. And I mean, at this point in time, we talk about how can you build a rig without accepting Thrustmaster, Logitech, and Fanatec wheel and pedals? I mean, that's where we're at in the industry.
And it's understandable to go, you know, to build it around the most popular one that sold the most units, which is the Logitech. But come on, you know, now today's day and age, Thrustmaster and Fanatec sell a lot of wheels,
Yeah.
and a lot of people have them, and you got to drill for them. So it's definitely a pro. It comes drilled and ready for all those three products. Also, next one is the pedals. You can adjust, we mentioned, for left foot breakers, you can adjust, you know, the pedals left to right. So also the adjustment, it's got 3 different levels of pivot on the adjustment of the pedals. So that's another pro.
And another pro is the adjustability of the seat. So not only forward and back, but reclining. So if you do have a lot of friends running your rig, really easy for someone to jump in just with that seat adjustment.
We talked about the cost as another pro. Well, we talked about the cost and the shipping as possibly being a con, but the price of this rig, considering what you get, is a pro.
Yeah.
I mean, for under $500, you got a pretty stout racing rig.
Yeah, and everything you need to have a stout racing rig.
Yep.
Another thing I love about this rig is it's not too high and it's not too low to the ground. So I'm getting older, I don't like things slammed on the ground, and at the same time I don't want it to be like a bus driving position. I need it to be low like a race car. I think that did that well, and that kind of takes me to the next pro for me, which is it's got a good driving position. That's what I look for in a rig, getting me in a racing position that's comfortable too.
Speaking of driving position, that leads us to it fits both the tall guy, 6'4", by the way, and much taller than me, like our friend Alan Boyston at Team VVV. He may almost be to that point. He's 6'6". So I can't believe there's a sim racer out there taller than me. But I think he mentioned to me that he might have struggled a little bit with it because of his height. But from about 6'4" down to under 5'5", you know, it's very adjustable for anyone within that range.
Yeah, I think we probably could have re-drilled and put the pedals further out and maybe flattened them out, and that might have helped the tall guy there.
I'm sure it would have. I'm sure for Alan it definitely would have. Actually, that's another thing for me. Flatten those pedals out, and my knee thing was gone because it lowered those pedals just enough. Even where we have it now, my knees weren't touching it. But then I was having to really extend my throttle foot to where it was like that versus sitting more upright, which is for endurance or longevity. It can kind of wear on you if you're really extending your foot out nonstop.
And I like the angle they had it at, so I wouldn't really want to give that up if it was for me.
Same here. I guess you could invert the pedals.
Yeah, you definitely could do that.
Final pro is the reversible shifter mount. It comes with a shifter mount and it's reversible, so you can put it on either side. So if you're used to shifting on the left, our Aussie friends and various people around the world, we shift on the right, so it looks so funny to see people shift on the left.
I know. I remember never mind. Sorry.
We can go to that forever.
So that does take us to our rev scale. We have compared notes on this one, and I think we are in perfect agreement, and this is a solid 8 out of 10.
You're not going to give it a 9?
No, I tried to give it a 9, but I had a few more
That's Sean's
marks.
favorite number, by the way, if you haven't guessed.
Isn't that a lucky number?
Mine's number 11, so kind of goes above the scale, so I can't ever use it. But yeah, 8, we definitely agree on the 8, and it definitely deserves it, which, why don't we get to our final thoughts, starting with you.
Final thoughts for me is, starting off, I'm going to compare the two rigs, and they're very similar in price. I wouldn't put one above the other, and when I say the two, the Evo and the Pro from GT Omega Racing. But I do like the solid square-built tubing. I think it looks better. I think it feels stiffer. I think it feels more like a race car than that thin tubing. and also the seat is a little bit more comfortable for me. Overall, I had a great driving experience. I had a great comfort out of this rig. A little bit of no frills though compared to expensive rigs. I mean, I put
even the Pro.
Yeah.
The GT Omega Pro has, you have the keyboard tray and the monitor stand, so you have a lot more options to go with.
Speaker mounts.
Yeah, a lot more options to go with the Pro.
Yeah.
My turn?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I did really enjoy driving this rig.
And for me, comparing the two, Pro's a little more roomy for me. The wheel deck was a little bit lower, but actually he's, I think, making some refinements to that one. But let's talk about this one. I was just mentioning to Sean yesterday that attach all my goodies from my Stormtrooper to this rig, and I could easily be racing on this, or put it on my platform, and I could make this my rig. I was racing in it yesterday, driving the Star Mazda, just with the triple screen, and I was immersed, running great lap times. You know, I didn't feel like something was gonna rip off or fall off, and you know, that's a big thing about a rig. If it's not solid and stable to where I don't have to think about it,
right,
it's not worthy of an 8 or above.
Yeah.
And that's why we're giving this rig an 8. I can race with this. I would take this and make this my own rig.
Absolutely.
So, you know, to make it a 10, maybe a little reinforcement down on the bottom to get rid of that pivot. Maybe a little more adjustability in the deck. Keyboard tray, you know. Some
North
other
American distribution.
Yeah, stuff like that would have put it at a 10, but it's pretty close, and it's definitely a good contender in the sim racing rig market, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So if you want to check this rig out, you can go to gtomegaracing.com, and they have both the Pro and Evo model. One thing we did mention, they did an initial run on these and they sold out. I mean, pretty quickly. So they're in a pre-order position and they're looking to ship out mid-December. So you can definitely get in on that.
Yep. And if you want to compare this rig to the Pro model that we've already reviewed, we'll have a link to that review here in our description of the show. You can check that out. We actually have 2 reviews, so probably just stick you with the last one because that pretty much tells you everything.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to wrap it up.
Yeah, and I think if you watch those 2 reviews, you'll be able to choose which one suits you better. They're distinctly different, but they both have some great qualities about them.
Now, speaking of sim racing rig reviews, if you want to check out many of our other rig reviews, go to our website at InsideSimRacing.tv. Click on that Sim Rigs link or tab at the very top of our page, and it'll take you right to all of our reviews. We've got over 20 there. Just about every rig on the market at this point has been reviewed and is in that section. Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Inside Sim Racing, twitter.com/Inside Sim Racing. You can follow us there. That's going to do it.
That is going to do it. So for Sean Cole, for Darren Ganji.
You are Sean Cole.
I am Sean Cole. For Darren Ganji, we'll see you on the track.